Good morning and welcome. I'm Sandy. Before you move too far into your day, I invite you to spend a few minutes here with me. We don't always get to choose what the day brings us, but we can bring awareness to how we meet it, with curiosity instead of assumption, with courage instead of avoidance, with presence instead of distraction. So take a breath, arrive as you are, and let's look at today's intention. Again, take a slow, deep breath in fully and gently let it go. As you exhale, allow yourself to settle fully into this moment. And again, notice the simple rhythm of your breath, the rising and the falling, the taking in, the letting go. We cannot continue to inhale forever, and at some point, we have to release the breath we're holding to make space for the next one. Our lives move through a similar rhythm. We receive, we experience, we hold, and then eventually things often ask to be let go. So today I invite you to consider the question that may not always be easy to ask. What in my life has completed its purpose? Think about the things we sometimes continue to carry simply because we've carried them for such a long time. A habit that no longer serves us, an expectation that we've outgrown, or even an old resentment, a story about ourselves that belonged to an earlier version of who we were. Sometimes we continue carrying something for no other reason that it's just been with us for so long, right? We forgot to put it down. We forgot that was even an option. We often think of endings only as a loss, and a lot of times some endings bring grief. Some things are precious to us, and when they end, we feel their absence very deeply. There's no need to pretend otherwise. But not every ending is a failure. Not everything that ends was a mistake. A season is not unsuccessful because it changes. A flower is not failed because its petals eventually fall off. And a tree doesn't cling to the leaves in the fall. Nature understands something full well that humans often forget or struggle with. Life moves through cycles of becoming, flourishing, completing, and then letting go to begin again. So, yoga offers us a powerful way to understand this through the principle of non attachment. This seems to be the theme for the last few meditations. Non attachment is often translated as non possessiveness, but its meaning reaches far beyond our relationship with material things. It asks us to notice what other things we're hanging on to tightly, not with our hands, but with our minds, our identities, and our expectations. We can grip an old version of ourselves. We can grasp the way we thought life was supposed to unfold. We can hold tightly to a relationship, a role, a belief, a resentment, or even an identity that has already completed its purpose. Non-attachment doesn't tell us that nothing should matter. It doesn't ask us to become indifferent or disconnected. Instead, it asks us to notice when holding on has become the very thing that prevents us from moving forward. In the book, The Yamas and the Niyamas by Deborah Adele, she demonstrates how important observing and honoring the cycles are by stating, imagine taking a breath in and never letting it go, right? We wouldn't allow that to happen because we would die. So letting go is part of the cycle. It becomes toxic if we hold things too long and too closely, just like the breath. With that, take a slow, deep breath in and gently let it go. And think for a moment about a story that you've carried with you for a very long time. It was very true at one time. You might have told yourself that you're not good at something, or you're too old to begin, or that certain things won't work out for you. Or maybe that it's just too late to change things now. When we repeat these stories often enough, we stop recognizing them as stories and we begin to accept them as facts. In addition to that, my yoga teacher stated that everything that you say and think has an impact on your physiology. And she says our issues live in our tissues for that reason. So if you can control your thoughts, absolutely, you can have a better impact on your physiology. Some of the stories we once needed no longer even describe the people we're becoming. It might be an old belief that once protected you or helped you make sense of a difficult experience. It might have helped you survive a particular season of your life, and you don't have to condemn that story. You don't have to be angry that you once believed it, but you also don't have to hold on to it. Ask yourself, does this story still belong to me? Release does not require anger. It does not require us to reject the past or declare that something was meaningless simply because its time has passed. We can be grateful for what something once gave us and still recognize that we no longer need to carry it forward. It served its purpose and it's time to move on. We can honor who we once were without remaining bound to that version of ourselves. We can appreciate what once worked without insisting that it must work forever. Sometimes growth asks us not to add something new, but let go of what no longer fits. Imagine yourself carrying a heavy bag. Over time, you've put a lot of things in this bag: responsibilities, expectations, identities, regrets, other people's opinions, and promises you made to a person that you no longer are. You might have carried this bag for so long that you've forgotten it can even be put down, but you don't have to empty the entire bag today. Simply notice what's there. Notice what's inside. There may be one expectation that no longer serves you, a resentment you're tired of feeding, or an obligation that was never really yours. Maybe it's a belief about yourself that you're finally ready to question. And then ask, what becomes possible when I no longer carry this with me? Sometimes we hold on just because empty space frightens us, right? The fear of uncertainty, letting go. Even familiar things that make us unhappy can feel safer than the unknown. We may know what needs to be left behind long before we know what comes next. And the space in between that ending and a new beginning can feel really uncomfortable. We want to fill that space quickly. We want to replace it with what was lost, define it, bring certainty to it, and know exactly where we're going. But not every empty space is a problem to be solved. Some spaces are needed to remain open for a little while. The field rests between the harvest and the planting. The breath completely empties before the next inhale begins. Night arrives before morning. There are times when we too are asked to trust the space between what has ended and what has not yet begun. This is where another yoga principle becomes important: santosha, which means contentment. Santosha does not mean that we must like everything that happens or that we should stop desiring growth or change. It asks whether we can be present with what is as it is now without immediately demanding that it becomes something else. Can we allow an ending to be an ending before rushing to create the new beginning? Can we remain in an empty space without immediately filling it? Can we trust that not knowing what comes next does not mean that nothing comes next? Sometimes contentment means allowing this moment just to be here as it is, unfinished. Take a slow, deep breath in, fill your lungs, and gently release it. And consider whether there is something you've been trying to revive rather, that's already completed its purpose, something you're still carrying or utilizing that no longer works, an expectation, an old definition of success or relationship with a past version of yourself. Sometimes suffering grows not only from what's ended, but from what our insistence is that should not have ended. That does not mean grief is unnecessary, and it doesn't mean we should rush ourselves into acceptance or pretend loss doesn't hurt. It simply asks whether there comes a moment when continuing to hold on to this prevents us from opening our hands to what might be coming next. Bring your attention gently back to yourself and ask, what am I ready to stop carrying with me today? Don't search for the answer. Just notice what comes naturally to your mind. It could be the need to have the last word, the expectation that you must please everyone, the belief that rest must be earned, the habit of comparing yourself to someone else, or needing for everything to be perfect before you begin. It might simply be the assumption that because has always been one way, because something has always been one way, that it has to remain that way. Are you willing to loosen your grip? Letting go doesn't always happen all at once, right? First, we have to bring the idea into our mind. We can release something and then later discover we've picked it up again. Release is definitely a practice. I always said that in my yoga classes when I teach. We're good at the grasping muscle. Our grasping muscles are very strong, but we need to bring strength to our letting go muscles. So release is a practice. We notice, we loosen our grip, we return, we choose again. Sometimes the first step in letting go is simply recognizing that we're holding on. This too is a parigraha, not the demand that we release everything perfectly and permanently in one dramatic moment. We tend to like things to be black and white, but they don't have to be. The ongoing practice of noticing when we're grasping something that no longer needs to be held on too tightly. Take a slow breath in. And as you exhale, imagine releasing something you no longer need to carry today. You don't have to name it out loud. Simply imagine your grip softening. Imagine your hands opening and the weight becoming lighter. Notice the space that remains. Do not rush to fill it. Let there be space. Let there be room. Room for other possibilities. Room for another way of seeing yourself. Room for another way of living. Another beginning that you cannot yet imagine. There is courage in beginning, but there's also courage in ending. There's courage in acknowledging that something has run its course and being able to say, this has served me and I no longer need it. This was part of my story, but it doesn't have to carry into the next chapter. This did matter, but I can still let it go. As you prepare to move into your day, carry this intention with you. Today I will notice what I am carrying. I will honor what has served its purpose without insisting that it remain forever. I will question the old stories that no longer serve me. I will allow myself to release without believing that every ending is a failure. I will trust that making space is sometimes the first act of creating something new. Before you leave this moment, ask yourself one more question. What might become possible if I made space for what comes next? And allow that space to be. You don't need to know what the next thing is. You don't need to have the new beginning planned. For today, it is enough to loosen your grip, to allow one thing to end, to set down one burden, to question one old story, to create a small space where something new can eventually grow. This is the wisdom of letting go, not rejecting what was, not rushing toward what comes next, but simply recognizing when something has completed its purpose and trusting yourself enough to open your hands and make yourself available to it. As you prepare to move into your day, take one final slow breath in and gently let it go. And remember, you may not get to choose everything this day brings your way, but you can choose how you meet it. Carry today's intention with you not as something else you have to accomplish, but simply as something to return to whenever you need it. Thank you for spending these few moments with me, and may you move through your day with awareness, intention, and an open heart. Until tomorrow, be well and meet your day with purpose. Namaste.